end of Ramadan, the weekend after Eid, inshallah. But I'm also the vice president of Yaqeen Institute, inshallah, which you'll hear about. You must have already heard about, where, mashallah, high quality, free access to knowledge, so that our children and people who are unknown or unfamiliar with Islam can, inshallah, become familiar with the authentic sources from high quality produced research, inshallah. And you'll hear more about that tomorrow as well. The brief khatir I wanted to give is that contradictions, consciousness, and celebration. We are in America, mashallah, celebrating Ramadan, the blessed month of Ramadan. What's amazing is that most of our neighbors, including our children, actually only see the contradictions about what Ramadan means. Ramadan is a time when we are supposed to not eat and drink during the day. In fact, we consume more food in Ramadan than in most other months in the rest of the calendar year. Ramadan is the time when we're supposed to be thinking about the fact that people are without food and are going, as Brother Ridwan mentioned, are refugees and suffering, and we forget conservation, so much so that if you stand next to a garbage can in any masjid on any given day when it's iftar, you will see the most amount of food wasted by the hands of the same believer who spent the day fasting and yet took more food and more samosas than he or she could possibly consume, just because they were taking revenge on the food, and the food, they had been away from the food for the day. So that's a contradiction that we have to bring together. Why is that important? In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامِ, that the fasting was prescribed. The end of that says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, which is the consciousness part of this. That if through fasting, the women and the men are not achieving a heightened state of consciousness, then we're defeating the very purpose of what the month is about. That we're actually contravening or going against, if you will, the very essence of what it means to be without food and drink and so on and so forth. That's just a temporary phase. The actual thing is, and to your colleagues, don't say to them, Ramadan is about food and drinking and not eating. Tell them instead that this is a month in which I achieve a heightened state of consciousness. And why is that? And how can they relate to that? Ask them, when there's a massive project due at work, do they consume a lot of carbs and sugars? Or do they actually go without food for longer periods with a little bit of snack just to keep moving, to keep the concentration at its highest? We do it so we can connect with the Quran. We do it so that the consciousness helps us to understand that indeed the blessings of Allah throughout the rest of the year are heightened for us. We get to be familiar with it. Believe it or not, we're sitting here in Taraweeh prayers. People have already passed away this Ramadan. If you're paying attention, they've already passed away this Ramadan, just in the first few nights of this month, subhanAllah. So what guarantee is there that we'll make it to the end? And in fact, what shape will we be in by the end of the month? So contradictions, and even a funny contradiction is, most of our children and we only talk to our friends and colleagues about Ramadan in that idea of food and drink. I want us to move away from that. Even one of the women at the university, she was trying to shake my hand, and I mentioned to her, I don't shake hands with women, and immediately she goes, oh, I'm sorry, is it Ramadan? And it wasn't even Ramadan. It wasn't even the month of Ramadan. But in her head, she thought, you guys must do everything, all of the other 11 months, and then during Ramadan, you try to act like, a different person altogether. I told her, no, I'm not going to shake your hand any time of the year, right? So that's the contradiction. The last part about celebration. Shahrul Ramadan. What is the month of Ramadan? It's the month in which the Quran was revealed. What if the psychology of our neighbors and friends and co-workers and everything else was switched so that they started realizing that there is this religion that actually practices, a group of people that practice what the book tells them, and then for 30 days and 29 nights in 1 month, they actually attempt to read, to recite, to reflect upon for a month, an entire month, the revelation. What if they started looking at us as people who actually focus on the collection? And maybe masajid can do this and talk about the zakah collection, how every masjid is collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars, and to show how much charity is done, how much compassion is shared for all the different causes. And you'll see this from right here. The masjid, mashallah, Valley Ranch is so generous, allows many different causes to come through and ask and appeal to you. But that celebration of revelation is exactly 1,451 years old. That's how many years have passed since the first revelation of Iqra occurred in the cave of Hira. 1,451. So if we're celebrating anything in Ramadan, it's about celebrating consciousness, heightened state of consciousness, and it's celebrating the fact that we have this book that we're attempting to put into practice, and we take a month to recharge and get closer to it, and inshallah ta'ala apply it for the rest of the 11 months. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept indeed all of our fasting, our praying, our sadaqah, our zakah, and all of the other acts of ibadah during this month. And may Allah bless every one of us indeed to achieve the end of Ramadan in a better state than in the one in which we started. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.